Welcome into Rounding the Bases, the podcast about culture and leadership with a baseball twist, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. Hashtag no stopping you. Enterprise Bank and Trust was founded by entrepreneurs with the sole purpose, the core focus of serving privately owned small and medium-sized businesses who have a story to tell. Enterprise Bank's commitment is to listen, learn, and guide clients to a lifetime of financial success. Enterprise Bank. Together, there's no stopping you. My name is Joel Goldberg, coming to you from the Kansas City Audiovisual Studios. They create engaging spaces. Check them out at kcav.com. Today, I have a guest who went from being a genius to a penguin. That's not quite like that, but the name certainly went that direction, and there have been more changes. How about dealing with an acquisition with your company in the midst of a pandemic? A lot of lessons to learn there. Big success story here, and I'm very excited right now to bring in to the podcast and someone that I've been hoping to connect with for a long time, Chris Cheatham, who at one point had the title of CEO of Risk Genius, but now has the, I would say, more complicated title, just in terms of words, Vice President, Product Insurance Intelligence for Bold Penguin. I hope I got that one right. I'll let him explain it. Chris, welcome to Rounding the Bases.
Hey, good to be here. Thanks for having me. I know it took a while, and we had a whole pandemic that we ended up not getting scheduled during. So glad I'm here.
Well, I always love just the networking game, and eventually you're going to be connected. If you know good people, you're around good people, you're going to be connected. And I think your name had come up from a bunch of people I knew in my network, including our friend Kyle Venna of the Kansas City Royals, and you guys had that connection. And so I was hearing it all over, and then I look up and there's just nonstop news having to do with Risk Genius. And oh, by the way, there's a pandemic going on. I think the first thing I want to ask you is this: what was 2020 like for you?
It was really interesting. I mean, lots of stuff that I'd never done before. I had never gone through a pandemic. I had never been at home so much in my entire life. Never had kids getting schooled upstairs and screaming and hearing them, and never gone through an acquisition where my company is being acquired. So I got to put all those together and see what was going to come out on the other end. Avoided going completely insane, at least most of the time. So it was wild. I'm kind of laughing because I'm in my basement right now, which was at the time completely unfinished, and it looked like I was in a dungeon. And so I was basically running acquisition calls from a dungeon, and people would get on and they'd be like, where are you? What is going on right now? And it was ridiculous.
Well, I think that anyone that is listening or watching will say, oh, well, I just went through my first pandemic too. So there's an element of this that almost everyone can relate to a good chunk of what you just said.
Yep. Being
in the basement or whatever the room was at home, the distractions, the kids, never having been home so much. I mean, Chris, you know that I disappeared for 6 months just with my baseball job, and I don't know that my family's ever seen me this much, and I'm not sure whether they like it or not. I guess it probably depends on the day. But we all can relate to that end of it. But then there's the excitement, stress, or however you want to describe it with whatever adjectives of seeing your company acquired and everything that goes with that, not to mention being at a distance oftentimes. So what was that process like for you?
It was wild. I mean, I would have never imagined an entire acquisition could be run via Zoom or other virtual software, right? And I was so used to being able, when I needed to talk to our investors, grabbing them and pulling them in a room and, sitting down and talking through it. And so you had to get good at reading people and understanding people online. I really thought a lot about you can't just plow ahead like you would before. I think it's very easy to get on these things and not have the niceties and the check-ins. I have a call coming up tomorrow with some of our independent agents that are serving as kind of a test group for Bold Penguin's new software. And the very first thing is a check-in. And our check-in question is hey, what got you through 2020, right? There are some really weird questions. There was one that was if you could paint a rainbow, what would it be? I was I don't understand that one. But like, I think it's important to like still have those moments and be human. And so I learned like how to try to still be human with a company and investors and an acquiring company and lawyers and financiers and all of that stuff all at once, without being in person.
Well, I think you have and I want to talk more about the business and how it got started and what you guys do and all that, but maybe not the rainbow question, because I don't really know if I know how to answer that one either. But clearly, I mean, just based on your LinkedIn bio, you have that fun personality. I mean, Chris Cheatham, the Luke Skywalker of insurance policies. I am fascinated by the application of technology to the insurance industry. I work with an amazing team to apply machine learning to insurance policies. I like rap music. Currently, I'm listening to Kanye, Jay-Z, and the Spider-Verse soundtrack. I also read a lot. Currently on a science fiction binge. I don't know if any of that is accurate anymore, but it gives a little bit of a. You've probably moved on in some things, or maybe you're still breaking out, some Spider-Verse at some point. I don't know, but yeah. I thought that was instructive and is instructive for anyone that's getting to know you, because it does show some of that personality. And I'm curious how important that personality was throughout all of this, not just with the acquisition, but with your team in terms of letting them know where you were at, communication, trust, and because those could be difficult and challenging times for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was really hard, to be totally honest with you, because like there's only so much you can talk about with a company about an acquisition that, especially kind of the early and middle stages when you're not sure if it's going to happen. There's really no point oftentimes in worrying employees about that. And so handling that and continuing on with the business at the same time that you are also doing, negotiations in the background, it's really tricky. And negotiating with people on the other side is really tricky, because a lot of the signals that you can use to figure out where you're at just aren't there. When a lot of times people even get on without, any face on a Zoom call. So that makes it even harder. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I have any big revelations so far about that process. Tried to do the best we could. But it was just hard. Like, trying to keep we had 30 some investors at Risk Genius, trying to keep everyone, updated on that side. That was tricky. So, it was just a really hard year, I think, for communications with anyone.
Yeah, an instructive year too, and one that I think that all of us still learning from at this point. So I want to go into a little bit of the background for you, Chris. How does a guy go from law school and practicing law into insurance and being the CEO of Risk Genius?
Yeah, I mean, this will be a call where we talk. I said there's a lot of different things that led to it, right? So I always like to say that, but there's a few things that kind of I always highlight. One of them was like, so I used to be a lawyer doing construction litigation, and I was like one of 100 lawyers in this big building. And I remember one day I just like paused and had kind of that like existential moment where I was like, wait a second, I want to be a partner at this law firm. What am I doing that's any different than any other lawyer here? Right? How am I going to attract business? And I realized I wasn't doing anything differently, because I was going to my office and doing the work, and that was it. And so I think one of the first kind of things I ever tried to do where I was experimenting outside of my comfort zone was I started a legal blog around green buildings, environmentally friendly buildings, and maybe the legal issues that would arise. And it really took off, and it led to a lot of speaking engagements, which was something I was not comfortable doing. If you ask Kyle, then he used to order pizza for me when we were in college rooming together, because I did not like to talk to people on the phone. That's a true story. And so I was forced with that legal blog to do a lot of things like speak and write, and just things that I normally didn't do. And it led to a different part of my brain turning on. And I started getting interested in new technologies, new science, and started, evaluating technologies that were evolving in the legal space. One of those was like AI applied to text, having computers read a document. And so, long story short, eventually I had a company that was, handling a lot of insurance documents. And I said, well, can we apply that kind of artificial intelligence technology to these documents to help people read them faster? And so that's really what led to Risk Genius in 2015.
So what were the goals of Risk Genius? If you can go back to those early years, because obviously the world has very much changed. I mean, your world and anyone involved with Risk Genius, the world has totally changed. What were your hopes back then?
Yeah, I mean, there was an article that actually came out when we announced what we were doing that I thought did a better job of explaining what we were going to do than we had explained it. They just called us the Google of insurance policies. I was like, it's so great. Before Risk Genius, most people were using databases to store their insurance policy documents, and they weren't searchable. You couldn't find what was in the document. And these are like 100-page documents, 200-page documents, or even longer. And so we really wanted to help the insurance. There's, the carriers like think of like a Nationwide or a Progressive, or the brokers, in Kansas City, think of like a Lockton or a Brush Creek Partners. And in the commercial insurance space, understanding what's in your policy was very important. And so we wanted to create technology that would help people read those documents and understand the contents.
Which I don't know a whole lot of people outside of maybe lawyers that have to do this, that actually are ever going to read it all, understand it all, or want to understand it all. Right. And I mean, it's just I'm speaking for pretty much anybody. It's intimidating to look at that stack of stuff with language that doesn't make sense to the everyday person.
Yeah, no, it's true. And like, you probably have business insurance for your business, right? I bet you've never looked at it.
Nope.
Yeah, it's just and it's kind of the structure. That's why there are independent insurance agents. It's their responsibility to understand, what you need for your business and to make sure you get the insurance coverage that you need. And, circling back to the pandemic, it like created one of those events where people actually started pulling out their insurance policies and looking at them. Because in the insurance policies, sometimes there's coverage for business interruption. Like if your business gets shut down, what happens? And also, though, the insurance industry knew that a giant pandemic would be a big problem because there had been, the potential for a pandemic back in 2003. And so they evaluated and figured out, oh my gosh, if every business shuts down and everyone files a claim and gets coverage, we're in big trouble as an insurance industry. And so there were virus exclusions in most insurance policies here in the United States. And so people had to pull out their insurance policies and figure that stuff out. And it was a very tough time. Just understand how these policies worked and how exclusions work and how coverages work. So it's not we're really, really far from still solving the issue of understanding what's in your insurance policy very quickly. But we're working towards it. And it's important because insurance instruments are really, really important to making the economy work.
So that's obviously still the case. The name has changed as you guys were acquired by Bold Penguin. I believe they're out of Ohio. What was that transition like? You talked a bit about going through an acquisition from the basement of your home, but what was it like to go through the process and seeing your baby, so to speak, not just yours, but turn into someone else's, and now moving forward with even more news?
Yeah. So when I was looking at the acquisition, I kept looking at it from three vantage points. Like, is it good for the business? Is it good for the business and the employees? Is it good for the investors? And is it good for me? And I got to the point where I could check all three boxes. And I said, this is great. Bold Penguin has helped over 2 million small businesses get business insurance. That is way more small businesses than Risk Genius had ever touched. And so there was a huge distribution play for our technology within the Bold Penguin platform. All the employees at Risk Genius got to come over to Bold Penguin and keep working, right? So that was great. The investors certainly were happy because they voted to do this. And I was excited because, frankly, when I talked to the guys at Bold Penguin and learned about what they were doing, the two co-founders, I was like, wow, what you all are doing is way bigger than anything I considered or tried to do. So, just trying to keep a good framework for evaluating it was important along the way. I think you referenced then the even more recent news, which, Bold Penguin then announced, it's early February. So in early or middle January, that they had been acquired by American Family Insurance. American Family, loves distribution plays in the insurance space, and they'd been a partner of Bold Penguin for some time, and so they want us to keep doing what we're doing, and so they decided to acquire us and support us in that mission. So here we are. So yeah, 2 acquisitions in about 4 months, kind of wild.
So I mean that's a lot. Not it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean it's just a lot very quickly, and maybe it doesn't. There are probably moments where it feels like it's been a long process because you're the one that's knee deep in all of the weeds. But I want to get back to just your people. I know you have a good culture, and that's just a topic that I'm always so fascinated in. One, because I'm surrounded by it with the Royals and the way they built their culture. Two, it's now what I speak to companies about. But how were you able to? We talked about it. It's tough to communicate and fill everybody in with what's going on in the midst of the pressure of an acquisition, and they don't need to know everything anyway. However, I'm guessing that you didn't want to lose, and it was important to keep the culture that you had and keep building on that and make it a place that people want to be. So how were you able to keep that consistency in terms of an identity, values, mission, and all that?
Yeah, I think a big part of it, frankly, is that the culture of the 2 companies was very similar in that, we expect people to do the work that they're supposed to do and figure it out. Like there's not a lot of, telling people here are the 10 things you're going to do today. That's not really how technology startups like Risk Genius or Bold Penguin work. So there was just a ton of alignment around that. Same industry. We had, the other thing is we really strongly, both companies believed that, independent insurance agents weren't going away, which, that it's like, if you think about technology, I think people a lot of times make the mistake of assuming technology is just going to get rid of humans in certain processes like right away. It never works that way. It's very, very incremental in how it happens. And those humans, we as humans want to always be valuable, and we control the systems and the technology that are getting created. So we find ways to, make ourselves useful anyways. Like in baseball, for example, maybe they'll eventually go to umpires that call balls and strikes that are robots. I think that's coming. But there's still going to be umpires. They're not just going away, right? There's too many bang bang plays. There's too many interpretations that have to happen. So I think that making sure the 2 companies were aligned culturally was the key. I will also say that Jeremy Smith, who was the CEO, president of Risk Genius, did a really great job of figuring out that in the transition, how to make sure the cultures were aligned, the people are aligned, people are comfortable. So we did a lot of surveys of our employees to make sure they were happy or where things were falling down. And we tried to pick up those pieces because for a lot of us, it was the first time we were doing an acquisition like this.
So much to learn for you, for everybody, right? I mean, there always is, and it's exciting, and now obviously more change coming. I want to shift gears just a little bit here, Chris, and get to my baseball themed questions. And of course, we've referenced a little bit of baseball, at least along the way here, but let's talk a little bit about your biggest home run hit. What's the biggest home run that you have hit in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I would honestly I pushed for the Bold Penguin acquisition within our company, and I think it really worked out the way that I expected it to in most facets. And so I think that was a good one. It was good for the employees, good for the investors, it was good for me, and like I'm loving what I'm doing. The mission's pretty awesome. So I think that would be one. I think this, one other one that comes to mind is when I took the leap into entrepreneurship and stopped practicing law and quit a very big law firm in Washington, D.C., which was comfortable job. I think that was another one because it just kind of forced me to figure things out, and I learned that I was pretty decent at it. So yeah, jump in.
Does that fall in the category of recovering lawyer?
Yeah, definitely recovering. It's always something I have to work on.
I hear that from a lot of former lawyers. I never hear it from the current lawyers, though. Like, if that's insulting or not, but it's one that you hear a lot. And I get it too. I mean, you sort of the amount of time that you invest in that, in becoming that lawyer and all the education and climbing the ranks, and suddenly you're taking those skills and you're using them elsewhere. With that said, there are going to be misses along the way. There are always going to be misses for all of us. And I always tell people that if you're going to miss and you learn from it, you do gain something from it. So what's a big swing and a miss that you've taken, and what did you learn from it?
Oh, swing. There's so many. Yeah, I'm just trying to think through that for a second. There's some that I can't mention. I think maybe the first iteration of our business was called Claim Kit. And it was the idea we would collect claim documents from business construction sites, construction, companies, and make them available for claims. And, it wasn't exactly what I had hoped in that we were collecting claim documents. And so I had to get into it before I realized, oh, I don't want to spend the next 20 years scanning documents, right? There's a bigger, more important solution here. There's something better we can do. There's something more important we can do. So that was probably, I think that was a swing and a miss, but it kind of, led to a bigger thing. And I think that, as long as you can do that, you point to that and say, well, I learned from this thing, then that's really what matters.
And then the last baseball themed question is small ball, the little things that add up to the big things. It gives me a chance to talk about the new book. Well, I won't talk about it too long because everybody's heard me mention it over and over again. Small ball, big results. It is about the little things, the singles, the bunts, the sacrifices, the stolen bases, the defense. So much of what we saw with the Kansas City Royals that can turn into the home runs. And I think, to me, it's really a culture question. It matters no matter what we do, those little things that sometimes go unnoticed. What is small ball to you?
Yeah, it's, to me, the thing that came into my head was just showing up every day, right? So like as a business owner, it was very easy if I wanted to cut out early or, take a Friday off. And I was pretty religious in unless I was actually taking, vacation time, showing up, doing the work, doing meaningful work. It's very easy to get bogged down in the stuff that really just doesn't matter. So it's that mindset, right, of showing up and doing it the right way. Like I have kids now that are doing kids sports, and sometimes I can see like my 9-year-old, for example, going through the motions of soccer practice and the skills that they're learning at the Legends Academy. And I'm like, do the work. Like if you're going to sit there and do a Maradona, do the Maradona. Like do it as if there's a person in front of you instead of kind of going through the motions. And so I think that's the big thing is like, don't just show up to do the thing, do it with a purpose. That's how you incrementally improve every day and make a company better every day and get somewhere.
And you know what I really love about that answer too, is that it is teachable at the youngest of ages. I mean, it's teachable to a 3 or a 4-year-old too, in the smallest of ways. It's teachable to a 9-year-old on the soccer field, and they may not comprehend it at the level that we need to comprehend it. At the same time, they take it in much better than we do at our older age. I'm older than you, but they're sponges at that point. And so it starts young. 4 final questions as we round the bases. We'll have a little bit of fun with these too. If you were wearing out the Spider-Verse soundtrack and Jay-Z and others back whenever you brought up that LinkedIn profile, what are you wearing out nowadays?
I'm gonna grab Spotify for a second. So I'm really into, it's completely the opposite of rap music, but I'm really into Sturgill Simpson Cutting Grass Volume 2. So he's kind of like this alt country rock dude, and like he's put out these studio sessions that he's done during the pandemic, and they're just wonderful. And so I've been listening to a lot of like Sturgill Simpson and other kind of like rock country stuff.
Okay, I'm going to listen to that when I hop in my car later today to get to an appointment. And I'm always, and Sturgill Simpson's great, but sometimes you get on something and then you move on to something and you forget about that unless you're creating all the lists and all that kind of stuff. I seem to continuously be wearing out, not that anybody asked me, the Avett Brothers for like the last 10 years. And that just becomes my default. A little bit of a similar category there, not totally, but love Sturgill Simpson's voice for anyone that might care about that.
I want to get back to a concert with him. Like that is kind of like something I imagine now, like, oh man, wait till concerts start again. How awesome is that going to be? I actually got to go to the Sporting KC playoff game where they had the shootout where the goalie blocked all 4 shots.
Yeah.
And I just remember the moment when I was at my first live sports game, and I actually put this on Instagram to all my friends. I was like, your live sports moment will happen again. And like, it literally brought tears to my eyes. I could think about it when they introduced the team and all of that stuff. So like, I just can't wait till we all get back and are doing our thing with sports again. It's gonna be great.
It's such a powerful point though too, because, and my wife and I were just saying this the other day, we can't wait till we go back to listen to live music. And it doesn't have to be a big concert. It could just be in a bar. It could be at Knuckleheads or whatever it is, just to be able to sit there. I mean, I would like to consider doing it at this point just for the piece of the live music.
Yep.
Beyond what I'm watching on YouTube or whatever it is. I'd like to be able to do it without worrying about whether I'm going to get sick.
Yep.
And so there'll be such a relief to be able to get back to that. And I think a greater appreciation for something that we already appreciated before.
Yep.
Okay. Second question as we round the bases, and this will be a little bit more of a post-pandemic, but we'll make it more in the insurance world, because I know you were telling me before you came on, hey, you make a living of making insurance and everything you've talked about fun or palatable and trying to.
Yeah.
And it's doable too, but it takes some talent to be able to do that. But you were talking to me about some of the changes in the industry and not needing paper as much, more digital, which I think all of us knew for a long time that I don't need these stacks of papers coming to my house in whatever it is. I'm not looking at them anyway. It's just taking up time. We used to say you're killing too many trees, but I mean, come on, we've been living in the digital age for how long now? What will the pandemic do in terms of the ability to continue to have done business, even though we weren't face to face? How will that change your industry?
I mean, it already has. Like, businesses just expect now to be able to buy insurance online. Businesses and people expect to be able to do banking online. And so there was some things in place, but other things had to get built, and some things had been built but weren't being fully utilized. And that's not going back. Like, I don't want to go into my bank, period. Right. It always annoyed me that I had to take a check and deposit it at the bank. Why couldn't I just take a picture of it and send it to them? And so just all of that stuff is not going back. Groceries, for example, like, I don't think my wife will ever change the way she shops for groceries now. She likes to order them online and pick them up. So there's all those things that just aren't going to change. And then there's other things like you and I talked about, like, I think we're going to all enjoy live concerts or sitting in a bar and having a beer. That sounds amazing right now. Little things like that will come roaring back. I think it's going to be a lot like the roaring 20s after, the last big pandemic. So we found ways to make our lives easier despite the fact that we're in this really difficult situation. And I think those things aren't going away.
Totally agree with all of that. And I think it's interesting to see where it's going. And I am always amazed that it could take something like a pandemic or fill in the blank, something tragic, something whatever, to actually force change that was already needed. But,
it's always like, I learned this at a young age because, like, I don't know why. Oh, my dad was in insurance. And so he kind of explained the history of risk to me. But like, things only change with big events. Like, systematic changes only occur with big events. Yeah. It's just human nature. Until then, we don't see it.
Right. And oftentimes it's just easy to stay the course, because if the course is going well, why even mess with it, even though there are always ways to make it better. And so obviously that's going to come from this third question as we round the bases. And I want to just hit back on something that you said before, because I think it's important for people to hear too. And I've met so many speakers since I started my speaking business, and really understanding that there are millions of speakers out there making an impact on people's lives. And so here you are, a guy that said you were introverted, and I wouldn't know that in talking to you and having you on here or having met you in person. But I'm always amazed, and I'm not an introvert. But by the way, you could be an introvert and be a TV host too. I mean, people just assume that everybody that gets on a stage has a big personality, or everybody that gets in front of a camera has a big personality. There are plenty of situations where I'm uncomfortable and shy, and drop me into a room full of people, and I'm maybe not as good at that as people would assume that I am. So I think that this question is for those that are out there that might have certain fears, whether it be getting on stage or whatever it is. You had to conquer some of that. It was part of what you were doing. How were you able to do that? Because I believe you could still be an introvert and still get up in front of people and make a big impact. But what was that process like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I actually remember the moment where it was the first step I ever took to kind of getting over being an introvert and kind of not liking to talk in public. I went to a green building conference, right? And I was in the audience just listening. It was the first time I'd ever kind of gone to something for that type of topic. And I knew a lot about it, but I wasn't on stage, obviously. And so there was a Q&A period, and I just remember raising my hand, and like it was almost like I was watching myself do it and asking this question. It was kind of a loaded question about something that was going on in Washington, D.C. around green buildings. But like, I also, like, I'm a huge believer in serendipity, right? So you do the thing, you do the work, and then luck happens. That's typically how it works, right? And so I raised my hand and asked that question, which was me doing the work, kind of getting over that fear. And then afterwards, an insurance brokerage that was hosting the event came up to talk to me and said, "Hey, we'd like to write a white paper with you about this topic, and we'd like to have you come speak at our next conference." And that really that opened the door for me. And I was like, okay, you have to put yourself out there, and then good things start to happen. So, yeah, it can be really scary. Like, we're all, particularly now with like social media and like trolling and all of that stuff. Like, I can't even imagine, by the way, the messages you get as like a big personality out there. But like, I don't know, just ignore that stuff, but put it out there, and the right people will find you, and good things will happen.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, look, we all have fears and self-doubt. I think sometimes, especially for someone that might be scared, say, of getting on stage or introverted, they just assume that someone that is extroverted has it all figured out.
Yep.
And they don't. I certainly don't. And as far as the trolls go, the mute button is one of the great inventions in the history of social media. It's more powerful than the block, because the block, they know then that they got to you.
Interesting.
But the mute, they don't know that all the messaging that they're wasting their time trolling on. Because in my mind, I envision a troll spends all day trolling anyone they can. I might be wrong. That's the way I see it.
Yep.
And so, hey, troll me all you want. I don't see it.
Yep.
So if that's the way you want to spend your day, have at it. Enjoy.
I'm actually completely off Twitter right now, and completely off Facebook and Instagram. I don't know. The December and the events around December and the election, I was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm spending way too much time checking Twitter. So I just signed out, and I think I'm done.
And did that feel good?
Yeah, it does now. At the time, you have that void then of where you used to fill your time on your phone, right? Yeah. When you have downtime, and it's just gone. And so you have to find like real things to do. So like whatever that is, I like to read books. So I'm reading a lot more now.
What are you? This wasn't going to be my final question, so I still want one more, but what are you reading right now?
It's right next to me, actually. Can you see this?
So for those that are listening that won't see it, road bike maintenance. I was not expecting you to pull that one up.
So yeah, I'm like, I started riding, like I stopped going to the gym, right? But working out's important to me. Like, it keeps me sane. And so I bought a road bike during the pandemic. And so I ride. And then when I was riding, I was like, well, I got to fix stuff, or I had to take it in to be fixed. So let's figure out how to fix stuff. So I'm studying up now on how to fix bikes.
Very cool. And the first road maintenance of a bike answer that I've had on this show. See, the beautiful thing about it is you never know where these are going. I don't want to know where they're going. That's part of the fun of the show. Last question, the walk-off as we round the bases. What is next for you, for the company? Enough probably acquisitions at this point, I suspect, but give me some long-term hopes that you have. Yeah,
I mean, crushing commercial insurance connectivity. So what I mean by that is, like, it should be like buying digital insurance. Like, if you're an insurance agent trying to get insurance for a business, you should be doing it online. Like, we're at the point where that should be happening. It's not there, particularly if you're outside a small business. So like, helping as many insurance agents use an online system to bind and quote insurance. It's so obvious to me. I think it's starting to become really obvious to the industry, but catching up the tech to it is really important. So continuing to work on that. It actually is really fun because it really does help people and allows them to handle something faster and much more efficiently. It used to take like 5 weeks to get commercial insurance if you're a small business. And like, now you can get it instantly if you work with an agent that's on the Bullpenguin platform. So just stuff like that. I think that stuff's fun and cool.
Yeah, and there's purpose there. There's making an impact and making people's lives and their companies better, which I know certainly feels good. It gives you that sense of waking up and accomplishing something every single day. So, Chris, congratulations
Thanks.
on everything that has gone down. And I'm glad that we finally got a chance to catch up and do this. For people, if they want to know and learn a little bit more, they can go to boldpenguin.com. You can also go to riskgenius.com and learn more about the business. Best of luck and success in 2021. I hope you get a chance just to get on that bike, clear the head a little bit, read a lot more, and have a little bit of peace and calm and some good moments at the youth soccer field and all that type of stuff. But
Yeah.
congrats again, and thanks for coming on the podcast.
Go Chiefs, go Royals too, right? Big game for both.
We got a lot going on. All right, great to be able to visit with Chris Cheatham. A shout out to my sponsors, Kansas City Audio Visual, Kissick Construction, and Enterprise Bank and Trust. Businesses often come to Enterprise Bank because they need a partner that leverages a long-term strategy in helping them to overcome short-term obstacles in achieving their goals. You can reach me at joelgoldbergmedia.com. Had a lot of people reaching out saying, hey, how can we get a signed copy of the book? My kids would tell you the signing, it's not that big of a deal. But if you're interested in it, you can reach out to me through the website, joelgoldbergmedia.com. And I hope that you will spread the word on Rounding the Bases and share with your friends and network. Thanks for listening to the podcast, and I hope to catch you next time on Rounding the Bases.